The day my own daughter looked me in the eyes and told me I didn't belong in the house I built with my own hands, something inside me broke. I still remember the sound of the deadbolt sliding shut. It echoed louder than any argument we had ever had. I stood on my own front porch holding nothing but my truck keys while she pulled the curtains closed like I had already disappeared. Before I tell you what happened next, if stories about family betrayal and impossible choices mean something to you, subscribe to Family Betrayal. And one more thing, the faces, photos, and scenes you see in this video are only there to help tell the story. They aren't the real people involved. 3 months earlier, my wife had passed after 36 years together. I was still learning how to wake up without hearing her voice. Every room reminded me of her laugh. My daughter Emily started visiting almost every day. She cooked dinner, helped with bills, and kept telling me she wanted to take care of me. I thought I was lucky. Then little things started changing. She insisted on organizing my paperwork. She asked where the house deed was. She convinced me to let her temporarily handle my banking because she said I looked exhausted. Every excuse sounded loving. One afternoon, she showed up with moving boxes. "Dad, I'm staying here for a while. It'll be easier." Within weeks, she had changed the furniture, invited her boyfriend to move in, and acted like every decision belonged to her. When I questioned it, she smiled. "You need less stress." I ignored the warning signs because I didn't want to believe my own daughter could be using me. Then came the morning that changed everything. I went to breakfast with an old friend. When I came home, my house key wouldn't fit. The locks had been changed. Emily opened the door just enough to look at me. "This isn't your home anymore," she said. "You don't belong here." I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. She stared at me without a trace of guilt while I stood frozen on the porch. I kept waiting for her to smile and admit it was some terrible joke. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, "You need to leave before I call the police." I couldn't believe those words were coming from the little girl I had taught to ride a bicycle. My own neighbors were quietly watching through their windows, and I had never felt so embarrassed. I tried to reason with her. "Emily, my clothes are in there. Your mother's pictures are in there. Please open the door." She shook her head. "Everything inside belongs here now. You should find somewhere else to stay." Her boyfriend stepped into the hallway behind her with a smug grin. That was the moment I realized she wasn't making these decisions alone. He looked at me like I was an unwanted stranger. I spent that night sleeping in my pickup truck behind a grocery store. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured my late wife's favorite chair sitting in that living room while I shivered outside. I kept asking myself where I had gone wrong as a father. The next morning, I called Emily again. She ignored every call. I sent a text begging her to meet me for coffee. No answer. Then something even stranger happened. My bank called to verify a large withdrawal request that I had never made. My stomach dropped. I rushed to the branch and learned someone had tried to move money from my savings account using paperwork that claimed I had given my daughter financial authority. The manager stopped the transfer because one signature didn't look right. If he hadn't questioned it, I might have lost everything. That was the first time I seriously considered that this wasn't just a family argument. Someone had been planning this for weeks. I drove straight to an attorney's office carrying every document I still had in my truck. As he quietly read through the papers, his expression changed. He looked at me and asked one question that made my heart race. "Mr. Harris, did you knowingly sign over your house to your daughter?" I felt the blood drain from my face because I had never signed anything like that. Or at least, I didn't think I had. The attorney slid the papers across his desk without saying a word. My signature was on every page. At least it looked like mine. The document claimed I had transferred ownership of my house to Emily just 6 weeks after my wife's funeral. I stared at it until the words became blurry. "I never signed this," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "Then we need to find out how your signature got here." As I searched my memory, one afternoon suddenly came back to me. Emily had stopped by with a stack of insurance papers. She said they were routine forms that needed my signature after my wife's death. I had been exhausted, grieving, and barely reading anything. I trusted my daughter without a second thought. My attorney immediately hired a forensic document examiner. While we waited for the results, he filed an emergency motion to stop Emily from selling the property. That decision saved me. 2 days later, we discovered she already had a buyer lined up. If we had waited another week, my family home would have been gone forever. I couldn't stop asking myself why. She wasn't struggling financially. I had paid for her college, helped with her first home, and never turned my back on her. None of it made sense. Then an old neighbor called me. "I don't know if I should tell you this," he said nervously, "but your daughter's boyfriend has been bragging that they'll be moving into Florida as soon as your house sells." My heart sank. So that was the plan. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to erase me. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you ignored every warning sign? I'd honestly like to know, because I still struggle with that question today. A week later, the handwriting expert finished his report. The signature wasn't naturally written. It had been traced. The attorney smiled for the first time since I had met him. "This changes everything," he said. "Now this isn't just a property dispute." Before I could ask what he meant, my phone rang. It was the county sheriff's office. The deputy calmly said, "Mr. Harris, we'll need you at the courthouse Friday morning." I looked at my attorney. He smiled again. They have no idea what's about to happen. The courthouse felt colder than any place I'd ever been. I sat beside my attorney with my hands locked together, trying to hide how badly they were shaking. Across the room, Emily walked in wearing a confident smile. Her boyfriend followed behind her, whispering something that made them both laugh. They honestly believed this hearing would end with them keeping my house. They couldn't have been more wrong. The judge reviewed the documents in silence before my attorney presented the forensic report. The handwriting expert explained exactly how my signature had been traced from an old insurance form. Then the bank manager testified about the suspicious attempt to transfer money from my account. Finally, my neighbor described overhearing Emily's boyfriend brag about selling my home and moving away. The courtroom became so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. Emily's attorney asked for a short recess. When they returned, his confidence was gone. He quietly admitted his client's wish to withdraw every ownership claim. The judge wasn't impressed. "You don't get to erase fraud simply because you've been caught," he said. He immediately declared the property transfer invalid and restored the title to my name. Then he ordered the evidence forwarded to the district attorney for further investigation. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. 3 days later, I was standing across the street from my own house when 2 sheriff's deputies pulled into the driveway. One deputy walked to the front door and knocked. Emily opened it with the same confidence she had shown me days earlier. That confidence disappeared the moment the deputy handed her the court order. She had 72 hours to leave the property. Her boyfriend started yelling that the house belonged to them. The deputy calmly pointed to the judge's order and told him refusing to leave would only make things worse. For the first time since my wife passed away, I saw my daughter speechless. As they carried boxes to a moving truck over the next 2 days, I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just watched in silence, wondering how greed had turned the little girl who once ran into my arms into someone I barely recognized. When the house was finally empty, I unlocked my own front door. The smell of my wife's lavender candles had long faded, but one picture of us had somehow been left on the fireplace. I picked it up, sat in my old chair, and cried harder than I had at her funeral. Not because I had won, because I had lost something a courtroom could never give back. Months later, Emily wrote me a letter. She admitted her boyfriend had convinced her that I would eventually leave her everything anyway, so taking it early made sense. She apologized for every lie, every signature, and every cruel word she had spoken. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it, placed it in a drawer, and decided not to answer. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not always the same thing. I eventually restored the house, planted new flowers where my wife used to garden, and started volunteering at a local grief support group. Helping other people reminded me that pain doesn't have to define the rest of your life. If my story leaves you with anything, let it be this. Never confuse love with blind trust. The people closest to you deserve your heart, but they should never be beyond accountability. Real love is built on honesty, not entitlement. What would you have done if your own child had locked you out of the home you spent your life building? I truly want to hear your thoughts, so share your answer in the comments. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who believes family should always mean loyalty. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Family Betrayal for more unforgettable stories about trust, heartbreak, justice, and the strength it takes to rebuild when the people you love hurt you the most. Sometimes justice doesn't erase the pain, but it reminds you that the truth still has a way of finding its own